I kind of want to put on this light. I have had this light since I lived in New York, and I've never used it, but I feel so official when I put it on. I feel like it's very subtle. The effect is very subtle, but I love it. Okay, I feel like I'm a real YouTuber now. Hey y'all, it's Chimdi. So, I feel like I'm in a really interesting financial situation because I'm almost in the most that I've ever been in, not counting my student loans. I used to have like roughly 30K in student loans, paid it all off. Now I'm at roughly like $25,000 in debt, you know, and I made a video a while ago when it was only 9,000. It's literally only grown since then. Interest will get you, y'all, you know? This isn't a financial literacy channel, but there's this thing called interest, and it just grows. You just be minding your business and then you owe more money just because you went to go on a trip one time? Wild. Okay, that's not the point. That's not the point. Point is, I've got almost as much debt as I've ever had in my entire life. I've got about $1,000 in savings, and at the same time, I am like the happiest and like the most safe in my body, like feeling than I've ever had before. And that feels like such a paradox because for so long having money meant safety, it meant security. So it's very strange to actually be in this huge amount of debt but feel more light and secure and okay and supported than I ever have before. So I just want to explore that paradox because it feels very strange to me, and because I know folks follow my journey because I quit my job, and so much of the concern from people was like, literally, how will you live? You need money to live. And I was like, apparently that's what they say, but like, let's see. Let's see if that's true. We're gonna explore that. Before we get into it, I wanna thank my Patreon people. Speaking of money, thank you Patreon people. It's because of you that I go to the grocery store and I'm not stressed when I swipe my card. So I really appreciate that. You're keeping your girl fed. Thank you subscribers, of course. What have y'all signed up for? Subscribers, why are you? You gotta be careful. You gotta be careful with the kind of content you consume, okay? But I love it, thank you. Appreciate your support. I'm a creative coach. If you want some coaching, one-on-one help, you can sign up. The link is in my description, and I have a weekly newsletter called On My Spirit. If you're interested, you can also sign up in the link below. All right, let's get into it. Let's talk about it. All right, let's talk about it. The original thinking I had for this video was actually about how much money do you need to feel safe? Because the way I was approaching my debt is I had the Total Money Makeover Dave Ramsey approach to debt, which is like, debt is the worst thing in the world. You should be really intense and focused about paying it off, and it really should be kind of like your number one focus. One thing he also talks about is to have an emergency fund so that you can have some of that mental capacity to be spending down the debt. You're not always worried about having some emergency that like knocks you off your feet. But I had an experience recently where I had like trips coming up, things that I was like obligated to do. I really felt as if I couldn't say no, which is a huge separate thing in terms of my healing journey, is being able to actually embody and say no. And that meant putting things on my credit card. I was basically coming up to this point where I was like, unless I make this payment on my credit card, I'm going to no longer be able to use my credit card. That was at the time truly the worst case scenario, was like I will not be able to use a credit card. And so that meant I took basically the majority of my savings and I put it towards paying off my credit card. But what's interesting is I thought I would feel better because I was paying down this debt, but actually I felt more insecure, more scared, more concerned because I didn't have any actual cash, I didn't have any liquidity that I could use if there was an emergency. And that set me into a whole emotional journey. You know, I really do believe that the things we experience in life are for our own emotional development. So I was like, okay, this is coming up for me now. So I was, you know, doing my process work, doing my weeping, being with all the stuff that was coming up. And I came to this point where essentially I had to ask myself, what are your priorities? And I don't know if y'all have heard of that phrase of paying yourself first, but it's this idea that instead of thinking about your bills and your debt and all the things that you kind of have to pay for, you first put money aside for you, whether that's with investments or savings or whatever else. And then with the leftover money, you use it for all these different bills. And I had been using that approach for the last maybe 6 or so months. Every time I got any kind of payment, whether it was from Patreon, from Google AdSense, from some kind of freelance gig, whatever it was, I would take half of it and I would immediately just put it into savings, knowing that about 30% of that would go towards paying taxes. So I would just do that automatically. and then I would spend the money that I had left over for bills or buying things or whatever else. And it had been really effective. I'd saved up thousands of dollars. And so I got to this point where I just made this huge credit card payment, right? Savings are totally decimated. I'm feeling like I did the right thing by paying off my debt, but I feel terrible. I feel really insecure and I feel really concerned. And so then I get another payment from something or another. Maybe it was like a coaching payment or something. And I had to ask myself, okay, are you going to pay down this debt even more? Because this is kind of the big albatross, the big mountain that like needs to be taken care of. Or are you gonna go back to your approach of putting half aside for you and then doing the other half? And in that moment, I chose doing the half aside for me, which meant that I then wasn't paying my credit card balance in full. And that to me is like the cardinal sin of like having a credit card is you gotta ideally pay the full amount every single month, and you should at least be making the minimum payment. And I got to the point where I was no longer making the minimum payment. And I promise y'all, this was like, part of me is like, is this showing my privilege that these are my biggest problems? Because some people have, I remember when I made a video about being $9,000 in debt, somebody was like,
girl, only 9?
She was just like, you're not even, this isn't even. And I was like, is that not a lot of money? I do recognize that even in talking about debt, I'm still talking about it from a very privileged position. But yeah, for a while, this to me was like the biggest, hardest, worst case scenario was not being able to pay my credit card bills, you know? And I made a joke about this back when I was still in Mexico, just living my best life on the beach. I made a joke about like, yeah, getting Uber Eats instead of using my groceries and not paying my credit card bill. At that time, I still was paying my credit card bill, but it feels very much like it was an omen of things to come. And what I think is really interesting is that it's not the end of the world, you know? Because I think sometimes when we have these deep-seated fears, we really can't imagine a life after this experience, right? It really is the worst case scenario. And there's also all of the feelings, right? Like the guilt, the shame, the embarrassment. And I thought about that before making this video. I was like,
my family might see this, my friends might see this, they'll be so concerned.
Even my sister in her beautiful, gentle way was like, and have we considered getting a job? Or I was just like, no. Because here's the thing, this is like the fundamental thing in my life, y'all, is I really don't think I should have to. And I don't know if that's hubris, but I just like, in my heart of hearts, I don't think I should have to. If you are a human design fan, I'm a projector in human design. Projectors, we're supposed to take naps. We're supposed to be visionaries, okay? We're not supposed to be toiling the field. It's just not our makeup, you know? And for a long time, truly from a place of trauma, I really had this sense of like, no, you're supposed to be suffering, struggling, toiling, hustling, working really hard, breaking your back. That's the American way. It's capitalism, baby. Like, this is how it is. And I bought into that. I really did buy into that. And I think, I think what's tough is that I am fine. And so it's hard to then justify doing things that are unpleasant when you're fine, you know? That's like the crux of it. Like, I love my sister loves me, and it's such a blessing. I want to make a whole separate video about like the things that we don't even value are the things other people wish they could have, right? Because my dream was to live in New York, Brooklyn, Brownstone, running around being a creative out there, still a dream of mine. And I thought being here in Maryland, living with my sister was like, ugh, you know? But in reality, I was talking to a friend and she was like, I wish I had a sister that I could just hang out with and not pay no rent and get to like build my business and do my creative stuff. And I was like, oh yeah, this is a pretty sweet setup, isn't it? These things we take for granted. Other people are like, I literally wish, like you are literally living my dream. And I'm like, okay, let me be a little bit humbled, you know? I had been thinking that there was an element of being a burden on my sister because yeah, I'm not paying any rent, clean about half of the apartment. I clean the kitchen, she cleans the bathroom, but I also use the bathroom. I think of it in terms of like, what am I contributing to the household and am I contributing enough, you know? What I really realized is that my sister genuinely loves having me here. I am a delight. As y'all know, you're here because you get it. I'm a delight. Can you imagine living with me? It's delightful. It's just cackling. It's peace, all right? It's vibes. It's a good good time. And what I realized is like, this is a mutually beneficial situation. You know, I think if I found myself in a situation where truly like not having enough money, not having a bunch of money was really impacting my quality of living, I would be like, okay, I really need to do something and get another job and do more and hustle more and do this, that, and the third. But literally my life is very peaceful. I spend a lot of time sitting on a porch, staring at trees, going for walks. The money I get from AdSense and Patreon, the coaching and all these different things is enough for me to not pay all of this debt off, but like basically still live and have a really beautiful life. And so I'm kind of just chilling. And that's what's interesting is I realized that I thought I wanted to grow like a 6-figure coaching business and I wanted to be a millionaire and all these things. There's a part of me that still wants all of that. But when I think about what I actually need in terms of feeling safe and good in my body, I realize it's about $800 in cash. Truly. I started building my savings up again. Bit by bit, I just kept moving money. Every time I got some money, I would move half into savings. And once I hit around $700, I was like, for some reason, I feel like I can breathe again, you know? Like, I just felt like things were gonna be okay. And then I recently hit 1,000 and I was like, yeah, I honestly feel fine. And any bill that comes, I'm just like, I'll pay it off bit by bit, because I will. Like, I was talking to someone who was like, she said her uncle was like, listen, my last check on earth that I ever write, I don't plan on having it be cash. Like, basically saying he wasn't gonna leave a penny when he got out of here. And I'm not like that. I wanna Enzo out the energy. Even balance, owing no money when I get out of here. So I do still plan on paying off all this debt, but it's just interesting how it was just so scary to me before, and now it's just totally fine, and I feel comfortable talking about it. And I think when we talk about safety, that's like a big thing, is do we feel comfortable being honest about ourselves and our experience and what we're dealing with and going through, knowing that we have people in our life who will witness it. And I think when we are really relying on what people think about us and how people perceive us for our safety, it becomes really important. We have to be very careful about what we show and what we reveal, because that's jeopardizing our sense of belonging. It's jeopardizing our relationships. But once you are able to do your own inner work and feel more of that safety and belonging and sense of self without needing to be validated externally, then you can speak very honestly and with a much more carefree attitude about your life and just being your full expression more, because you know it's okay, like it's fine, you're good, you know, you're not relying on someone thinking you are a certain kind of way for your own kind of success. And there's a creator I absolutely love on here. His name is Caleb Marshall. He's the fitness Marshall. I'm in my dancing on YouTube fitness bag right now. I'm loving it. And one thing I really admire about him is that he is really in his full expression. And it's inspirational to me. I'm literally just like, wow. And as I get more subscribers, part of me is like, oh, there are even more eyes watching. That's not a thing to be scared of. That's a thing to embrace, because it means there's even more honesty. There's even more openness. There's even more impact when I do share from my true self than I would have with a much smaller audience. So that's kind of my challenge to myself as I continue to create on YouTube now that I've hit this milestone, is how can I keep showing up authentically? How can I keep pushing to the edge of my comfort zone in terms of what's okay to talk about, and how can I keep modeling for people what it looks like to be honest and to show themselves and to know that it's not the end of the world, for people to see that you aren't this like perfectly rich, beautiful, you know, charming, lovely human being. I mean, I am all that internally. Just taking the external a second to catch up, that's all. Let me know in the comments, how are you doing with your money? How much savings do you have right now? How much money do you need to feel safe? How much money is enough? I think that's like a big thing, is that anything that can be numerically, has a numerical value, you can always add more to that number. And so if you don't have that internal sense of safety, there will never be enough subscribers, there will never be enough money, there will never be enough whatever else, right? So I'm curious, do you have an enough amount? And is it something that you've already reached and you're sitting in a place of contentment, or is it something that's kind of further off? Because what I realize is that obviously I look forward to being debt free, but in terms of contentment, it's really just about how much cash I have on hand. And since I have a certain amount of cash on hand, I'm like, I'm all right. I'm gonna be okay. I've got roughly 6 months worth of food. That's how I measure my money, by how much can I get at the grocery store. And I'm like, I think that's about 6 months worth of food. Maybe more if I'm, you know, really hitting them rice and beans hard. So I think I'll be okay. Okay. One thing that gives me this sense of confidence too is like, I know a lot of people who are really wealthy, which is honestly a flex. And I also see, just through media, through being online, I also see people who have a lot of money, and there's literally no one I would trade places with. No one embodies a light and a like inner health with their money that I'm like, wow, this person, I want to be where they are. Every single person I see, they have money and then they have something in their, they have some kind of trauma that they're just like not addressing, and I'm like, okay, I'd rather heal my trauma and be dodging these debt collectors. Which is also trauma. Listen, the point of this video is don't listen to people on the internet. Listen to yourself. Listen to yourself, okay? They maybe do not have your best interest in mind, okay? If you don't want to have $20-something thousand in debt, maybe don't listen to me, all right? Obviously, if you want to be really joyful, I think I've got some tips and some pointers. But if you want to be able to, like, you know, put a down payment on a house or something, I ain't your girl. I'm living rent free. Okay, bye.